All right, so when we're doing this project, you're going to need to open a spreadsheet. If you've never done this before, you can use Excel or you can use Google Sheets. Because most of you own Chromebooks or have Chromebooks from the school, we're going to use Google Sheets in this example. So opening a spreadsheet, we open Google, and then if you're signed in, you can just go to these dots right here. If not, you probably would look it up. But this green icon is Google Sheets. You're going to click on Google Sheets. You're going to open a blank spreadsheet. So once you're in your spreadsheet, you obviously need to give it a title that is recognizable for you to be able to refind it. So I'm just going to call mine House Project. And then I usually put my name afterwards, or you and your partner's name. Okay. From here, we are going to kind of start the process of building our amortization table. So what an amortization table is it's a schedule or a spreadsheet that keeps all the information on your loan. So it keeps all the payments that you make, and it keeps the running total of how much debt you owe, how much interest you've paid, all of those types of things. And what this does is it predicts for you how much money you're going to spend both on interest and paying to the original loan. So, starting this out, I'm not sure why I do this, but I usually leave a row and a column open, and so the first cell that I go with is B2, because it's in column B and the second row. Alright, so right here is actually where we're going to put the label for our loan. The loan is going to be a house loan, so you could say house price, you could say loan amount. I always like to make mine very easy to customize, so I'm just going to put loan amount. You can put house price, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that you know that that's what goes there. And then, so this is just the label. Then you should leave a cell open that's near it, usually to the side, to the right, or down below. I always like to do mine down below, so I'm going to leave this cell right here open so that whenever I figure out how much my house is, I can type it in right there. The next thing that we need to worry about, and this comes from our equation, we need to know the percentage that our interest is. And if you look at the project, our first percentage that we're dealing with is 5%. So that's what we're going to put right here. And we're going to say this is the APR, the annual interest rate. You can also put rate so that you remember. And again, this is 5%. So luckily with Excel, it knows how to read percentages, so you don't have to type 0.05, just type 5% and it'll know what you mean. The next thing that we need for that equation is we need to know how many payments we're making, or how many years we're making payments for. And so this is called the loan term. And so we're going to label that, and then right below it, I'm going to say my loan term. If you remember, we're starting with a 30-year loan, so we're going to say 30 right here. And then this next part isn't something that we're actually going to use in this project, but it's always nice to put in amortization tables if you do this in the future. And I usually put this as the starting date, and then leave a little box to put that there. So that takes care of the stuff up here. The next thing we're going to build is the actual computational pieces of this chart. So we need to pretty much make a line, and a line for each payment that we're going to make. So when we're talking about payments, we are going to be having monthly payments, and we are going to be doing 30 years. So if we know that this is these are called the period, I just say also these are the payment number, the number of payments you're making. Okay, so something to consider, when you first take out the loan, this will be the zero payment, meaning you haven't paid anything. This is just where you've taken the loan out. And after that, the first month, you're going to make a payment, so that'll be number 1. And we could continue to type these in one at a time, but that's actually the beauty of using a spreadsheet program, is it'll create these patterns for you. These things are programmed to find these patterns. So the way you tell this program that you want to use a pattern is you highlight multiple cells together. That tells the program that you're going to make a pattern out of these. So it sees that you have those highlighted and it's going from 0 to 1, and it will continue to count up in 1 increments. So again, we need 360 payments. So if you want to duplicate down the column in the same pattern, you highlight both of them together, and then you use your cursor. See how it's white over here? You're going to drag your cursor over to this blue dot, and when it changes to a cross, you're going to click that and drag down. So it's dragging down. It takes a little bit, not too long. But we're going to go all the way down to 360. And actually, mine's going to have to be at 366 because I didn't start till the 6th cell down. Oh, I went way past that. Sorry, everyone. All right, so this is kind of how far each one of our columns is going to go. So we have 360 payments there. The next piece of the amortization table, or the next column, is again something that we're not actually going to use currently, but this would usually be the date column. And this is really nice just to keep track of when you've made payments, and something to put here. Usually I use equals sign to tell the program that I'm going to be giving it a location for data that it already has, or to make a computation. So anytime you want to do an equation, or you want to make some cell the same as another cell you already have, you can use an equal sign, and we want to put the starting date here. Again, it'll ask if you want to autofill, and what it would be autofilling would be to make the pattern from your starting date going down that column. So we probably don't want that to do that, so we're not going to autofill that. So then we're going to move on to the next column. So our next column is going to be our payment column. So in class we saw the payment equation, and when we have the payment equation, we can either use the equation and type it all out, or we can do the payment, we can do the built-in function for payments, which is already built into Google Sheets. It's also built into Excel. Most programming knows that they're going to be using it for finances, so many financing equations are already built in. So oftentimes when we do an equation, it's some so first off, before I get going too far, we're in the 0 period, and we actually don't make a payment there. So I'm going to move 1 box down. And when we're trying to find the function we're using, again, to tell it we're doing a function, we have to do an equal sign. And it's usually some abbreviation of what you're wanting to do. So since it's payment, it's PMT. And you can actually look up all of these things. You don't have to know all these by memory. They're easy to look up. When I click on payment, it shows me this green box that tells me kind of all the things that I need to make this equation work. So this first thing that is in there is the rate. And if you remember, we already made a box for this. It's up here. So I can click that box. So if I as I told you before, these are built on patterns. And so when I click a box, it wants to build a pattern by going down the column. But we just want this 5%. We don't want it to continue down the column. So we do something called freezing it, meaning it will be stuck in that cell. And this is done by doing money signs around the letter of the cell. Another thing about the rate is we are talking about the rate per payment, and because this is monthly, we need to divide by 12 here, because our rate that we have, 5%, is annual. So if you see in the green box, the way to tell your program that you're moving to the next piece of data is this comma. So we're going to put a comma there, and it'll show us moving on to the number of periods. Again, the number of periods, we could just type 360, but because I want to make this easy to customize, I'm actually going to click on my loan term, and I'm going to multiply that by 12. And that'll be that 360. And again, whenever we do these cells, we don't want it to continue following the pattern down the column, so we do something called freeze it. And again, that's the money signs around the letter. Okay, And then we need to do our comma to tell it we're going to the next piece, and it says we're moving on to the present value. So present value is actually the loan amount, and again, we've already made a space for that, so we're going to click that, and again, we don't want it duplicating in a pattern down the column, so we need to freeze it and freeze that cell. Okay, things that are in brackets are optional, and we don't have those things, so we don't need them, so we just close with a parenthesis. Okay, so this is something that shows 0 right now, but if you want, you can put in any loan amount. If you change it to $50, it'll change it automatically for you. And that's why I wanted to make sure everything up here is what we can customize, and it'll change the rest of the document for you. Okay, to the next column then. So the next column is actually the interest column, and this is to find out how much you pay to interest. So the way that a house loan works is you have some sort of interest that you pay to the bank in order to borrow that money, and the interest is taken out of your payment first before you go and pay off any debt. So we need to find out how much we're paying to interest. Okay, so the interest formula, again, we could use the one we already know, and you can type all that stuff out, or you can use the built-in function, and interest payment would just be I payment, so IPMT. And again, it shows you all these things. So the rate, we're going to click this, and remember we got to divide by 12, and we got to freeze it. Okay, and then the next thing is the period, and the period for us, if you're thinking about it, it would just be the number of payment we're on, or the period is over here. And this one's interesting. We actually do want this one to change as we're going down the row and create that pattern, so we don't freeze that, so we just put a comma. The number of periods, again, is this times 12. And again, we don't want that one to go down the column. It's always going to be that value. So we're going to freeze that. And then present value is the loan amount again. Okay. And again, loan amount is over here. And don't forget to freeze it, because you don't want it to go down to that next APR and make it give you an error. Okay, so now we have our interest. The next thing is called to principal. And what this actually means is how much is actually going to pay off your debt. And the nice thing about to principal is it's simple. It should be your payment amount minus your interest amount. That's how much is actually going to your debt. So this is going to be equals this minus this. And the reason we're not freezing these is because we want it to continue down the row as it changes. Okay? And the last thing is going to be like your total debt remaining. So I like to call it my total remainder. So this one's kind of an interesting thing. In the very first column is your 0. So that should be your loan amount. And then the very second spot is where we want to find out the remainder. So this should be equal to your previous amount minus your to principal. Something I forgot to say, and this was commented on in class. If you don't like these negatives here, you can always go change them up here with this negative. I don't really like them, so I like to change them because then my numbers all are positive and I can see that subtraction happening easily. So now we have all this stuff for 1 month, and the cool thing is now that we have it like this is built for patterns, and so we can actually drag these down just like we did with the period and payments. So it's already got this pattern, and if you don't highlight anything else, it'll assume this same formula, and anything you didn't freeze will move down the column, and anything you did freeze will stay the way it is. So we're going to go all the way down to that 360. Again, it takes a little bit. Try not to go past it this time. Okay. So again, our payments should all be the same. That's what we calculated. And then if we come to our to interest, You can either drag, or there's also something cool that's called a double click function. So if you do the same thing where you come here and you take your cursor and move it over the blue dot and double click, it'll actually duplicate down the row as far as the column to its left duplicates. So see how it's all the way at the bottom? We didn't have to drag it. So nice. So we're going to do the same thing here. Double click. Same thing here. Double click. Okay, so now if you go down the row, you can see that we are, what did we do? So you can see that it's decreasing and that we're slowly paying off our debt, and that eventually will get down to 0 on that last payment. Okay, so the reason we like to do it this way is because now I can change this to whatever I want. So if I need to pay $300,000 for a house, I can type that in. It'll update everything for me. If I need to change my rate to, say, 7%, I can change that and it'll update for me. Even if I want to change my loan term, I can update that. It'll change everything, but that's something that you need to recognize. Originally with our loan term, if we had 30, that would mean that we had 360 payments, right? Well, if we only have 15, then we should have half of that. So we would go down to our 180. Oh, there's something a little off here. Let's see, make sure we got everything. That's divided by 12. Oh, so this one, we ended up multiplying by 13 here, rather than multiplying by 12. That's why my math is off. And unfortunately, the double click doesn't work if there's already something in the column. So I'm going to drag it down all the way to 360, and this should update everything else. And once we've updated that, we can come down to here, and we can see where that 0 happens is right at 180 months, which is 15 years. So glad that we fixed that. I was kind of nervous there. Okay. So you can change any of these things and it changes the whole thing for you. Another cool thing is if you came to payment and you wanted to find out how much it would be if you added $100, you can add that right up here and then redrag it and it'll apply to all of your stuff. Some cool things to note is if you want, you can highlight anything and it will sum it up for you. So if I highlighted all of my interest, and this green box would tell me that that's $185,000. So this is good to know because if you're paying $185,000 to interest, you're paying this plus you're paying for your house. So you're actually paying almost $200,000 extra for your house. And that's because you are paying interest to borrow money from the bank. And it's good to test out different loan scenarios to see how much it really saves you, but also to see if you could actually afford that. With a 15-year loan, the payment price is a lot more, and so you'd have to see if you could afford it. So another thing, a lot of times people wonder why we're doing this in the middle of our exponentials, and that's because this money is moving exponentially. Our interest should slowly be decreasing exponentially, which also means that our two principals should be slowly growing exponentially. To show this, I like to kind of highlight, and this is pretty cool to do with Excel as well. If I highlight something and it's a set of data, I can use that data and put it in a chart. You just click these 3 dots and then insert chart. And then it'll ask you what type you want. I do want a line chart, so I don't need to customize it, but there's all this stuff that you can customize. And if I go back, you can kind of see. Here, we'll put this up so we can actually see better. We can see that it is decreasing and slowly getting faster and faster and faster. So this is that exponential change here. Okay, and then you can actually do the same thing with the payments. So I'm gonna, or the two principal, and if we highlight that and change it into a table, you can see it's exponential growth. And that is to show that it has that geometric pattern, and to show that these are those exponential movements and how they're kind of playing in your life.